The stars were dying around Kethvar, and Commander Velothi knew it was only a matter of time before her world joined them. She stood in the emergency command center deep beneath the surface of the Zilani homeworld, watching the holographic display that showed their fleet's final moments. Red markers blinked out one by one as Krex warships tore through the last of the Confederation's defenders. Each vanishing light represented thousands of lives lost, families destroyed, dreams ending in the cold vacuum of space. "Commander, the orbital stations are going dark," reported Lieutenant Kefra, his forearms trembling as he worked the controls. Like all Zilani, he was tall and thin, with gray skin and large eyes that had evolved to see in the dim light of their red sun. His people were peaceful farmers and scientists, not warriors. They had never been warriors. "How long until the Krex reach the surface?" Velothi asked, though she already knew the answer. 12 hours, maybe less. Their dropships are already launching. The Krex had appeared in Confederation space 6 months ago like a plague of metal and death. They were insectoids, each standing 8 feet tall with 6 limbs and mandibles that could crush steel. Their ships were black and angular, built for one purpose, conquest. System after system had fallen to their advance. Billions of innocent beings killed or enslaved. The Confederation had tried diplomacy first, as they always did. The Krex response was to glass 3 peaceful worlds from orbit. When the Confederation Navy finally mobilized, they discovered that their exploration vessels and light patrol ships were no match for Krex dreadnoughts designed for war. Now only Kethvar remained, and it too would fall within hours. "Sir, Science Council leader Mothtek is requesting immediate communication," another officer called out. Velothi nodded. The holographic display shifted to show an elderly Zilani female, her skin wrinkled with age but her eyes still sharp. Behind her, other council members from across the remaining free territories appeared as ghostly projections. "Commander, what is our status?" Mothtek asked. "The fleet is gone. Orbital defenses are failing. We have perhaps half a day before Krex ground forces reach the major cities." Silence filled the chamber. These were the leaders of a civilization that had existed for 10,000 years, and they were watching it die. "There is one option remaining," said Dr. Zephon, the Confederation's chief xenobiologist. His projection flickered as explosions rocked his research station in orbit. "The Deathworld Project." Several council members made sounds of distress. The Deathworld Project was theoretical. Desperate, some would say insane. "Doctor, we have been through this," Mothtek replied. "Even if such beings exist, even if they could help, we have no way to contact them." "Actually, we do." Dr. Zephon's image stabilized as his station's shields flickered back to life. 3 years ago, our deep space telescopes detected artificial signals from the Sol system third planet. The mathematical patterns suggest intelligence. Commander Velothi had heard whispers of this before. Sol 3 was listed in their databases as a Class Duthine death world, a planet so hostile that no reasonable being would expect complex life to evolve there. The surface was covered with poisonous water that fell from the sky. The atmosphere was 21% corrosive oxygen. Massive chunks of rock regularly fell from space and struck the surface. Tectonic plates shifted constantly, causing the ground itself to shake and crack. And yet something lived there. Something that built cities and sent signals into space. "The signals we detected were primitive radio waves," Dr. Zephon continued. "But the mathematical constants embedded in them show clear intelligence. Prime numbers, geometric sequences, physical laws. If these beings survived on a death world, they might be our only hope." "This is madness," protested Council Member Jethra. "Even if these humans exist, how could beings from such a world help us? They probably fight with rocks and sticks. Or," Dr. Zephon said quietly, "they fight with something we cannot imagine. Something forged by a world that tries to kill everything on it, every single day." The argument might have continued, but an explosion rocked the command center. Dust fell from the ceiling as Krex orbital bombardment began targeting the surface. "We have no time," Commander Velothi said firmly. "If there is even the smallest chance these Deathworlders can help, we must try." "Doctor, can you send a message? The deep space communication array is still functional. I can encode a basic mathematical message with star charts and a plea for help." "But Commander, Sol is 47 light-years away. Even if they respond immediately, it would take almost a century for help to arrive." "Then we send it anyway. Perhaps they have technology we do not understand." Perhaps they can travel faster than light in ways our science has not discovered. Moth Tech closed her large eyes. Do it. Send the message. Dr. Zephon's team worked frantically as the bombardment intensified above them. They encoded their message using prime numbers and basic physics, the universal language of intelligence. They included star maps showing their location, recordings of the Krex attacks, and images of the destruction. Most importantly, they included a simple plea. We are dying. Please help. The message was compressed into a tight beam transmission aimed at Sol 3 and broadcast across multiple frequencies. It would take 47 years to reach its destination, traveling at the speed of light across the vast emptiness between stars. As the transmission ended, another explosion shook the facility. This time, the lights flickered and did not come back on. Krex dropships have breached the atmosphere, reported Lieutenant Kefra. Estimate 30 minutes until they reach the outer cities. Commander Velathi looked around the command center at her people. They were scientists and farmers, teachers and artists. They had never hurt anyone, never invaded another world, never enslaved another species, and yet they were about to die because the universe was full of predators. All stations implement Evacuation Protocol 7, she ordered. Get as many civilians as possible to the deep shelters. Make the Krex work for every meter of ground. As her officers rushed to carry out her orders, Velathi stared at the communication display showing their message racing toward the stars. Somewhere out there, on a world of poison air and falling rocks, creatures called humans might one day receive their call for help. She did not expect them to answer. How could they? But as the first Krex warriors burst through the command center's doors, as the last free world of the Confederation fell to conquest and death, she held onto one small hope. Perhaps somewhere in the darkness between the stars something was listening. Perhaps the Deathworlders would prove that surviving the worst world in the galaxy had made them strong enough to help others survive as well. The transmission continued its journey through space, carrying the desperate hope of a dying civilization toward a small blue world that orbited an unremarkable yellow star. Behind it, the Krex celebrated another victory, never imagining that their actions had just awakened something they did not understand. Something that had learned to fight in a place where everything was trying to kill it. Something called humanity. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of Luna Station, watching Earth rise over the moon's horizon. The blue marble looked peaceful from here, swirled with white clouds that hid the reality below. Most species in the galaxy would see those clouds as poison gas, the vast oceans as acid seas, and the brown continents as wastelands of shifting stone. But Sarah knew better. She knew that beneath those deadly storms and crushing gravity lived 8 billion humans who had turned their hostile world into a garden. Admiral, we have an urgent communication from Deep Space Array 7, announced Lieutenant Commander James Park as he entered the observation deck. His voice carried the tension that had filled every corner of Luna Station since the alien message arrived 72 hours ago. Sarah turned away from the viewing port. At 45, she was one of the youngest admirals in human history, promoted rapidly through the ranks as humanity prepared for the day they knew would come. The day when they would discover they were not alone in the universe. She had just never expected first contact to be a cry for help. What is the status of the translation team? Sarah asked as they walked toward the command center. Dr. Martinez says they have confirmed the basic message. It is definitely a distress call from something called the Zilani Confederation. The beings are herbivorous, peaceful, and they are being attacked by a species called the Krex. Sarah nodded grimly. The message had been detected by 3 different deep space monitoring stations simultaneously. The mathematics were elegant, the star charts precise, and the attached recordings showed massive space battles that painted a clear picture. Somewhere out there, 47 light-years away, good people were dying while bad people killed them. The command center buzzed with activity as Sarah entered. Dozens of technicians worked at holographic displays, analyzing every part of the alien transmission. At the center of it all stood Dr. Elena Martinez, the lead xenolinguist who had spent her career preparing for this moment. Admiral, we have finished the complete translation, Dr. Martinez reported. The message contains detailed information about their civilization, their attackers, and their situation. It is definitely genuine. Show me, Sarah ordered. The main display activated, showing recordings from the message. Sarah watched in silence as peaceful alien cities burned under orbital bombardment. She saw refugee ships fleeing across space only to be hunted down by sleek black warships. She watched beings who looked like gentle farmers and artists being slaughtered by 8-foot-tall insects with razor-sharp claws. The Kreks appear to be a conquest species, Dr. Martinez explained. They have been expanding across that section of the galaxy for several centuries, enslaving or destroying everything in their path. The Zalani Confederation lasted longer than most, because they immediately surrendered and tried diplomacy. Fat. A lot of good that did them, muttered Commander Park. Sarah studied the tactical data embedded in the message. The Kreks had superior numbers, better weapons, and ships designed purely for war. The Confederation had exploration vessels and science ships that were never meant to fight. Admiral, there is something else, Dr. Martinez added quietly. The message was addressed to Deathworlders. They know about Earth's classification, and they are asking for our help specifically because they believe only beings from a hostile world might be able to stand against the Kreks. The command center fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. Humanity had been discovered, catalogued, and dismissed by galactic civilization as primitives living on a world too dangerous for real intelligence to evolve. Now that same galactic civilization was begging them for help. Admiral, what are your orders? Asked Captain Rebecca Torres, Sarah's chief of staff. Sarah looked around the command center at the faces of her officers. These were people who had trained their entire lives for deep space operations that might never happen. The children and grandchildren of the generation that had built humanity's secret fleet in the asteroid belt and the outer moons, preparing for the day when Earth would need to defend itself among the stars. That day had come. But instead of defending Earth, they were being asked to save strangers. Open a priority channel to all fleet commanders, Sarah ordered. Full encryption, maximum security. Within minutes, holographic projections appeared around the command center. Admiral Chen found herself facing the commanders of humanity's secret space force. Admiral Okafor from the Mars fleet, Admiral Volkov from the Jupiter Defense Group, Admiral Singh from the asteroid mining fleet that doubled as a carrier force, a dozen others who commanded humanity's hidden strength. Ladies and gentlemen, I am sure you have all reviewed the alien transmission by now. I am asking for your assessment and recommendations. Admiral Singh spoke first. The tactical situation is clear. The Kreks have approximately 2,000 capital ships in that sector. They outgun the remaining Confederation forces by at least 10 to 1. Our intelligence suggests they are overconfident, added Admiral Volkov. They have been conquering peaceful species for centuries. They have never faced real military opposition. Admiral Okafor leaned forward in her projection. The question is not whether we can help. The question is whether we should help. This is not our fight, Sarah. We do not know these beings. We owe them nothing. We owe them everything, Sarah replied firmly. They trusted us enough to send that message. They looked at our world, saw that it should have killed us all, and decided that made us their best hope. They believe in us before they even know us. The debate continued for an hour. Some argued for caution, for sending only a small exploratory force. Others advocated for full military intervention. A few suggested ignoring the message entirely. Finally, Sarah called for quiet. I have made my decision. We are going to respond to this distress call with everything we have. Not because we have to, but because this is who we are. We are the people who turned a death world into a home. We are the people who refuse to let our hostile environment defeat us, and we are not going to let it defeat anyone else either. She turned to her communications officer. Prepare a response message. Mathematical encoding, same transmission method they used. What should the message say, Admiral? The officer asked. Sarah thought for a moment. The Zalani had sent them everything. Their location, their situation, their desperate hope. They deserved an answer that matched their courage. Message received. Help is coming. Hold the line. The response was encoded and transmitted within the hour, aimed at the Confederation's last known position. At the speed of light, it would take 47 years to reach them. But humanity would not wait that long. As the message raced toward the stars, Sarah activated the emergency mobilization protocols that had been prepared for decades. Across the solar system, hidden bases came alive with activity. In the asteroid belt, massive ships that had been disguised as mining stations revealed their true nature as battleships and carriers. Around Jupiter's moons, construction yards that built civilian spacecraft began rolling out destroyers and cruisers. On Mars, the clone armies that humanity had never admitted existed began loading onto transport ships. In Earth's ocean depths, submarine bases launched vessels designed for three-dimensional combat in the vacuum of space. Humanity's secret was about to be revealed to the galaxy. They were not primitive survivors clinging to a hostile rock. They were 8 billion beings who had turned their world's attempts to kill them into the ultimate military training program. The Kreks were about to discover what happened when someone threatened the innocent in front of a species that had learned to fight by surviving everything the universe could throw at them. Admiral Sarah Chen looked out at the fleet assembling around Luna Station and smiled grimly. The Deathworlders were coming, and they were bringing everything they had learned about warfare from a world that never stopped trying to teach them. The galaxy was about to get a very unpleasant education. Captain Vexhai clicked his mandibles in satisfaction as his heavy cruiser Flesh Ripper dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Behind him, 11 more Kreks warships emerged from the twisted space between stars, their black hulls gleaming with weapon arrays designed to crack planets. This was supposed to be a simple mission. Hive Admiral Zakath had sent them to eliminate whatever primitive species had dared to respond to the Confederation's pathetic plea for help. Intelligence suggested Sol 3 might support a population of a few million at most. Some backward beings living in mud huts who had managed to build a radio transmitter. They would be extinct within the hour. "Captain, we are detecting some unusual readings from the inner system," reported his sensor officer, Sub-Commander Kliktha. Like all Kreks, she stood 8 feet tall on 6 legs, her chitinous armor naturally black and razor-sharp. Combat pheromones filled the bridge as the crew prepared for battle. "Define unusual," Vexhai ordered, settling into his command throne. "There are significant energy signatures throughout the system, sir. Multiple large structures in orbit around the 4th planet. Extensive mining operations in the asteroid belt. And the 3rd planet—" She paused, mandibles clicking nervously. "Sir, I am reading population centers that suggest billions of inhabitants." Captain Vexhai rose from his throne and stalked to the sensor station. The display showed a system alive with activity. Massive industrial complexes orbited the gas giants. Ships moved in regular patterns between the worlds. The asteroid belt buzzed with mining vessels and construction platforms. "This cannot be correct," he hissed. "Sol 3 is classified as a Class Dwight Death World. Nothing intelligent could evolve there." "Sir, incoming transmission from the 3rd planet," reported the communications officer. "They are broadcasting on multiple frequencies encrypted but following standard first contact protocols." Vexhai's compound eyes glittered with amusement. So these mammals had learned some galactic protocols. Impressive for primitives, but it would not save them. "Put them through," he ordered. "Let us introduce these humans to their new masters." The main screen activated, showing a bipedal creature with pale skin and short brown fur only on the top of its head. It wore some kind of uniform and sat in what appeared to be a command center. The background showed other humans working at sophisticated control stations. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Fleet," the human said calmly. "You have entered Sol space with hostile intent. You have one opportunity to withdraw. This is your only warning." The Kreks bridge erupted in clicking laughter. "Admiral, Defense Fleet?" These mammals were more delusional than intelligence had suggested. "I am Captain Vexhai of the Kreks hegemony," he replied, letting his natural pheromones carry the scent of violence and death. Most species found Kreks battle pheromones terrifying. "You will surrender immediately and prepare to be processed for slavery or consumption. Resistance will only increase your suffering." The human's expression did not change. Her small eyes remained steady, showing no fear. "I take it that is your answer." "Very well." The transmission ended. Captain Vexhai settled back into his throne, satisfied. Soon these humans would learn what it meant to oppose the Kreks. His 12 heavy cruisers could glass their entire homeworld if necessary. "Sir, multiple contacts emerging from the asteroid belt," Kliktha reported suddenly. "I count 37 vessels, various sizes. They appear to be moving to intercept us." 37? Vexhai clicked his mandibles in amusement. "Against 12 heavy cruisers? These mammals are even more stupid than I thought. All ships battle formation. Target their largest vessels first." The Kreks fleet arranged itself into a perfect battle line, a formation that had conquered hundreds of worlds, their weapons charged, shields activated, and targeting systems locked onto the approaching human ships. But as the human fleet drew closer, Captain Vexhai began to feel uneasy. The enemy vessels moved with a coordination he had rarely seen, shifting formation in complex three-dimensional patterns. Their ships were sleek and angular, built for speed rather than brute force. "Sir, they are launching fighter craft," reported the tactical officer. "Hundreds of them." Vexhai watched the display with growing concern. The fighters moved in tight formations, accelerating at rates that should have killed their pilots. No biological being could survive those G-forces. "Perhaps they use robotic pilots," he muttered. "No matter. Begin the attack." The Battle of Sol began with a thunderous exchange of weapons fire. Krek's plasma cannons lanced through space, striking human ships with devastating force. But instead of exploding, the human vessels absorbed the hits and kept coming. Their armor held, their shields flickered and reformed. Then the humans returned fire. Captain Vexhai had never seen weapons like these. Instead of energy beams, the humans fired solid projectiles at incredible velocities. Metallic slugs, accelerated by magnetic fields, struck his ships with the force of small asteroids. Where Krek's weapons burned through armor, human weapons punched through it, creating massive holes that vented atmosphere and crew into space.
"Sir, the Bone Crusher is reporting critical damage,"
shouted his communications officer. Their forward weapons array is completely destroyed. On the display, Vexhai watched in horror as human fighter craft swarmed around his heavy cruisers like angry insects. But these fighters moved like nothing he had ever seen, performing impossible maneuvers that bent physics. They spun, rolled, and dove through three-dimensional space with a grace that suggested their pilots were born to this environment. "How are they not dying?" he demanded. "Those acceleration forces should liquefy their internal organs." His answer came when one of the human fighters was destroyed by defensive fire. Instead of an explosion, the craft simply broke apart, revealing a single occupant in some kind of protective suit. The being tumbled through space for several seconds before small thrusters activated on their suit, allowing them to maneuver. The human pilot was still alive. After acceleration forces that should have killed any sane being, they were still alive. "Sir, these humans appear to be adapted for high-gravity environments," Sub-Commander Cliktha reported, her voice tight with stress. "They can survive forces that would kill most species." Captain Vexhai realized with growing horror that the intelligence reports had been completely wrong. These were not primitive beings living on a gentle world. These were predators who had learned to thrive in conditions that would exterminate the Kreks. The battle turned into a nightmare. Human ships used the system's own gravity wells to accelerate beyond anything the Kreks had seen. They fired projectiles that used the planet's magnetic fields to curve around shields. Their fighters performed combat maneuvers in 3 dimensions while Krek's pilots, evolved from plains-dwelling insects, could only think in terms of ground-based warfare. One by one, his ships began to die. "Sir, we have lost 8 vessels," reported the tactical officer. "The humans are targeting our engines specifically. They want us dead in space, not destroyed." Vexhai realized the terrible truth. These humans were not just defending their system. They were hunting his ships like prey, disabling them systematically to prevent escape. "All remaining ships prepare for hyperspace jump," he ordered. "Emergency departure." But even that was denied to them. The humans had somehow deployed some kind of gravity mines throughout the battle zone. Every time a Krek ship tried to engage its hyperspace drive, the artificial gravity wells pulled it back into normal space. In 17 minutes, 12 Krek's heavy cruisers were reduced to one heavily damaged vessel, limping toward the edge of the system. Captain Vexhai's ship, its engines crippled and life support failing. The human admiral's face appeared on his screen once more. "Captain Vexhai," Admiral Chen said calmly, "your ship is disabled. Surrender now and you will be treated according to the conventions of war." "What are you?" Vexhai whispered, his voice carrying the pheromones of fear and defeat. "We are humans," the Admiral replied. "We are from Earth, and we do not like bullies." As Krek's rescue pods ejected into space and human ships moved to recover them, Captain Vexhai stared at the blue world that orbited Sol's 3rd position. Somewhere on that beautiful, deadly planet, billions of these creatures had learned to fight by surviving conditions that killed everything else. The Kreks had spent centuries conquering civilized species who fought wars according to rules and honor. They had never faced beings who learned combat from a world that followed no rules except survival. His ship's communication system crackled to life one final time as the hyperspace drive managed a single, damaged jump toward Krek's space. As the twisted dimensions of hyperspace closed around his dying vessel, Vexhai carried with him news that would change everything. The Deathworlders were real. They were coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. General Mothtek had not expected to live this long. The Zilani leader stood in the ruins of what had once been the Confederation's military command center on Kethvar, watching the orbital display through a cracked holographic projector. 3 weeks had passed since the fall of their homeworld. 3 weeks since the Kreks had begun their systematic extermination of her people. But somehow, pockets of resistance remained. Hidden bunkers, underground cities, rebel camps in the mountain regions that the Kreks had not yet bothered to clear. The insectoid conquerors seemed content to take their time, enjoying the slow death of Confederation civilization. "General, we are receiving some unusual readings from the outer system," reported Commander Ithrak from his position at the sensor station. Like all the surviving Zilani, he was thin and pale from weeks of hiding underground, his large eyes sunken with exhaustion and grief. Mothtek barely looked up from the supply reports she was reviewing. Food was running low in the mountain bunkers. Medical supplies were almost gone. Without a miracle, the last free Zilani would be dead within a month. "Define unusual, Commander." "Sir, I am detecting hyperspace emergence signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts, very large." That got her attention. Mothtek moved to the sensor station, her forearms working the controls with practiced efficiency. The display showed space around Kethvar, painted red with Krek's orbital platforms and patrol ships. But at the very edge of sensor range, something was happening. "Could be Krek's reinforcements," she said quietly. "They may be bringing in more ships to finish the job." "No, sir, these readings are different. The hyperspace signatures do not match Krek's technology. The energy patterns are unusual." General Mothtek studied the display more carefully. Whatever was out there was big, much bigger than anything in the Krek's fleet, and there were multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace in coordinated waves. Then the first ships came into visual range, and Mothtek's breath caught in her throat. They were sleek and silver, built with flowing lines that seemed more grown than constructed. But what shocked her was their size. The smallest vessels were larger than Krek's heavy cruisers. The largest, she had never seen anything like them. "Commander, how many ships are we detecting?" Ithrak's voice was barely a whisper. "Over 800, sir. And they are still arriving." On the main display, space around Kethvar began to fill with alien vessels. First came small, fast ships that danced between the Krek's patrol fleets, moving with impossible grace. Then larger warships, bristling with weapons arrays that looked nothing like any galactic technology she had ever seen. But when the main fleet arrived, General Mothtek felt something she had not experienced in months. Hope. The largest ships were absolutely massive, each one the size of a small moon. They moved in perfect formation, followed by carriers that immediately began launching fighter craft in numbers that defied belief. Behind them came support vessels, supply ships, even what appeared to be mobile shipyards. "Sir, incoming transmission on all frequencies," reported the communications officer. "It is coming from the largest vessel." The holographic display flickered and resolved into the image of a being Mothtek had never seen before. It was bipedal like the Zilani, but shorter and more solidly built. Its skin was a pale color, and it had short fur only on the top of its head. It wore what appeared to be a military uniform, and its small eyes held an expression of calm determination. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Fleet," the alien said. "We received your call for help. Krek's forces. You are ordered to withdraw from Confederation space immediately. This is not a negotiation." General Mothtek stared at the display in shock. Earth. She knew that name. Sol 3, the class Toilen Deathworld that had somehow produced intelligent life. These were the beings they had sent their desperate message to. The creatures who had survived on a world that should have killed them all, and they had come across the system. Krek's communication channels erupted with activity. Hive Admiral Zakth, commanding over 2,000 Krek's vessels from his massive flagship, broadcast his response on all frequencies. "Unknown species, you are interfering with Krek's territorial expansion. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. You face the might of the hegemony's third fleet. We have conquered half the galaxy. We will not be deterred by a handful of ships from an unknown world." Admiral Chen's expression did not change. "Admiral Zakth, you have been warned. Your forces will withdraw, or they will be removed." You have 60 seconds to begin your departure. The Krex Admiral's reply was a burst of laughter that carried the pheromones of violence and arrogance. 60 seconds? You amuse me, mammal. Perhaps we will keep some of your species alive for entertainment after we crush your pathetic fleet. Admiral Chen looked at something off-screen, then back at the transmission. 60 seconds are up. The Battle of Kethvar began without fanfare. One moment the two fleets faced each other across the void. The next, space erupted with weapons fire unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The humans did not fight like any civilized species. Instead of forming battle lines and trading shots, their ships moved in three-dimensional swarms, using the planet's gravity well to accelerate into impossible attack patterns. Their fighters coordinated with orbital debris to create improvised obstacles that only they seemed able to navigate. But it was their weapons that truly shocked General Mothtek. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, the humans fired solid projectiles at velocities that approached a significant fraction of light speed. When these projectiles struck Krex ships, they did not simply damage them. They punched completely through them, creating massive holes that vented entire sections into space. "How is this possible?" whispered Commander Ithrak. "Those velocities should require impossible amounts of energy." On the display, they watched human vessels use magnetic fields to accelerate metal slugs to incredible speeds. But more than that, they watched human ships perform maneuvers that should have killed their crews. Spinning through 3 dimensions, diving toward the planet's surface and using atmospheric friction to change course, executing turns that generated forces no biological being should survive. They are not just from a death world, Mothtek realized. They are adapted to it. Those acceleration forces, those gravity changes, they are normal conditions for them. The Krex fleet, designed for overwhelming firepower in open space, found itself fighting an enemy that turned space itself into a weapon. Human destroyers used gravitational slingshots to accelerate beyond anything the Krex could match. Their fighters created debris clouds that served as both cover and ammunition for their magnetic weapons. Most shocking of all was their coordination. Every human ship seemed to know exactly where every other human ship would be at any given moment. They moved like a single organism, like a school of fish or a flock of birds, but in 3 dimensions and at speeds that challenged comprehension. "Sir, the Krex flagship is taking heavy damage," reported Ithrak. "Multiple human squadrons are concentrating fire on their command systems." General Mothtek watched in amazement as a dozen human destroyers attacked the massive Krex flagship. Instead of simply firing at it, they surrounded it completely, attacking from every angle simultaneously. Their magnetic weapons created a crossfire that no amount of armor could stop. But the humans did not stop there. When Krex boarding pods launched to attack human ships, they found corridors designed as killing zones and crew trained in zero-gravity combat. When Krex fighters tried to engage human fighters, they discovered that beings raised in high gravity could outmaneuver anything evolved in normal space. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Krex Third Fleet had been completely destroyed. Not a single ship escaped to hyperspace. Admiral Chen appeared on the display again, but this time she was speaking to the surviving Zilani resistance. "General Mothtek, this is Admiral Chen. We have eliminated the Krex forces in this system. Our medical teams are standing by to assist with humanitarian aid, and our engineers will help repair critical infrastructure. The Confederation is under human protection now." Mothtek found herself struggling to speak. "Admiral, how did you get here so quickly? Our message would take decades to reach your world." Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time Mothtek saw the predator that lived behind those small human eyes. "We did not wait for your message to arrive, General. We left as soon as we sent our reply. We have been traveling for 3 weeks, but that is impossible. No ship can travel faster than light by that much. General, we are from a world that tries to kill us every day. Impossible is just another word for Tuesday." Admiral Chen's expression became serious again. "We have much to discuss, but first let us help your people. No one else dies today." As human ships began landing on Kethvar's surface carrying medical supplies and food, General Mothtek realized that the galaxy had just changed forever. The species everyone had dismissed as primitive Deathworlders had just demonstrated military technology and tactics beyond anything galactic civilization had imagined. And they had used it not to conquer, but to protect. The humans were here, and they were everything the Confederation had hoped for and more. The age of Krek's expansion was over. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, humanity's flagship, and watched the tactical display show the final phase of the Battle of Kethvar. Around her, human officers worked with the calm efficiency of people who had trained their entire lives for this moment. But this was not the battle she had expected to fight. The Krek's Hive Admiral Zakth commanded over 2,000 vessels from his massive command ship, the Devourer of Worlds. His fleet had conquered half the galaxy using standard tactics, overwhelming firepower, superior numbers, and the fear that came from centuries of unopposed victory. He had never fought humans before. "Admiral, Krek's forces are attempting to form a battle wall," reported Commander Park from the tactical station. "Standard galactic formation designed for maximum forward firepower." Sarah nodded. She had studied every known battle in galactic history during the 3-week journey to Confederation space. Every civilized species fought the same way. Massive ships in organized lines trading shots until one side retreated or was destroyed. It was warfare designed by beings who had evolved on gentle worlds where combat was rare and honor was more important than victory. Humans had learned to fight on a world that followed no rules except survival. "All ships, implement Protocol Omega," Sarah ordered. Across the human fleet, captains who had trained in the asteroid belt and the gravity wells of the gas giants began executing maneuvers that no civilized being would attempt. Instead of forming lines, they scattered into 3-dimensional formations that used Kethvar's gravity, magnetic field, and orbital debris as weapons. The human destroyer UES Relentless dove toward the planet's surface, using atmospheric friction to change course and emerge behind a cluster of Krek's cruisers. The carrier UES Yorktown launched fighter squadrons that coordinated with the planet's 2 moons to create gravitational slingshots that accelerated them beyond anything the Kreks had seen. But it was the tactics that truly shocked the Krek's forces. "Sir, the humans are not fighting in formation," reported the Krek's tactical officer aboard the Devourer of Worlds. "They appear to be fighting as individuals." Hive Admiral Zakth watched the display with growing confusion. The human ships moved like the pack hunters his species had evolved to fear, but in 3 dimensions and at impossible speeds. They attacked from every angle simultaneously, never where his weapons were pointed, always where his shields were weakest. "All ships, concentrate fire on their flagship," he ordered. "Destroy their command vessel and they will surrender." A dozen Krek's dreadnoughts turned their main weapons toward the Indomitable. Plasma beams that could crack planets lanced through space toward Sarah's ship. The beams struck empty space. The Indomitable had moved, not by accelerating forward or backward, but by dropping toward the planet and using its gravity to curve around the incoming fire. As the ship swung past Kethvar's upper atmosphere, it launched a spread of kinetic projectiles that used the planet's magnetic field to guide them toward their targets. The projectiles struck 3 Krek ships simultaneously, punching through their hulls with the force of small asteroids. "How did they do that?" demanded Zakth. "No ship can maneuver in a gravity well without destroying itself." His answer came from his science officer. "Sir, these humans appear to be adapted for high-gravity environments. They can survive acceleration forces that would kill any civilized being." On the display, Zakth watched human fighters perform maneuvers that defied physics. They spun end over end while firing, used debris clouds as cover while moving at impossible speeds, and executed turns that generated dozens of gravities of force. But the pilots were not dying. They were thriving. "Sir, multiple human squadrons are approaching our position," reported the defensive coordinator. "They are using some kind of coordinated attack pattern." Zakth watched in horror as 30 human destroyers surrounded his flagship. Instead of attacking from one direction, they came from all directions simultaneously, above, below, port, starboard, even from directly ahead and behind. They moved like a 3-dimensional whirlpool, creating a crossfire that no amount of armor could deflect. But worse than their tactics was their coordination. Every human ship seemed to know exactly where every other human ship would be at any given moment. They fired through spaces where their own vessels had been seconds before, trusting their allies to be somewhere else when the projectiles arrived. It was coordination born from living on a world where everything was moving. Tectonic plates, weather systems, orbital debris, magnetic fields. Humans had learned to fight in an environment where standing still meant death. All weapons fire at will, Zakth screamed. Destroy them all. The Krex fleet unleashed everything it had. Plasma cannons, particle beams, fusion missiles, gravitational torpedoes. Weapons that had destroyed 1,000 civilizations filled space with deadly energy. The humans danced between the attacks. They used the weapon's fire itself as cover, hiding behind the energy discharges and emerging to strike when their enemies were recharging. They turned the battle zone into a three-dimensional maze of debris, energy fields, and gravitational anomalies that only they could navigate. Most shocking of all, they turned the Krex weapons against the Krex themselves. Human ships used magnetic fields to redirect plasma beams back at their sources. They captured gravitational torpedoes and launched them at new targets. They turned the very space around Kethvar into a weapon that only they knew how to use. "Sir, we have lost over half our fleet," reported the tactical officer, his voice carrying the pheromones of fear and defeat. "The humans are not just defeating us, they are toying with us." Zakth realized with growing horror that this was exactly what was happening. The humans were not trying to destroy his fleet quickly. They were demonstrating their superiority, showing him and his forces that they could win whenever they chose to. They were teaching the Krex what it felt like to be helpless. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human flagship," reported communications. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the display, her expression calm and professional. Behind her, the Indomitable's bridge showed no signs of damage despite being under constant fire. "Admiral Zakath, this is your final warning. Surrender now and your crews will be treated according to the conventions of war. Continue fighting and I will be forced to demonstrate what humans call total war." "What is total war?" Zakth found himself asking. Admiral Chen's smile was terrifying in its gentleness. "It is what we learned from our world, Admiral. It is what happens when everything around you is trying to kill you, and you decide that you are going to kill it first." The transmission ended, and Zakth watched in awe and terror as the human fleet suddenly changed tactics. Instead of the controlled demonstration they had been conducting, the humans began fighting with the desperate ferocity of beings who had learned warfare from a world that never showed mercy. Human fighters began ramming Krex ships after ejecting their pilots, turning themselves into guided missiles. Human destroyers used their own hulls as weapons, colliding with Krex vessels and using superior human damage control to survive impacts that destroyed their enemies. The carrier Yorktown actually landed on a Krex battleship and began deploying ground troops directly onto its hull, but it was the battleship UES Titan that demonstrated true human warfare. Instead of simply firing at the Krex command ship, it began using gravitational manipulation to drag asteroids from the outer system. Within minutes, chunks of rock the size of buildings were raining down on the Krex fleet at orbital velocities. Zakth realized he was not fighting a civilized species. He was fighting beings who had learned tactics from a world where planetary bombardment was a daily occurrence called weather. "All remaining ships, retreat to hyperspace," he ordered. "Emergency withdrawal." But even that was denied to them. The humans had deployed some kind of gravity manipulation technology throughout the battle zone. Every time a Krex ship tried to engage hyperspace, the artificial gravity wells pulled it back into normal space where human fighters were waiting. In 8 hours, the Krex Third Fleet was reduced to scattered wreckage and a few hundred survivors in escape pods. Hive Admiral Zakth's flagship limped away from the battle zone, its engines barely functional, carrying news that would reshape galactic civilization. Admiral Chen appeared on his screen one final time. "Admiral Zakth, the Krex expansion ends here. Any Krex forces that enter Confederation space will be destroyed. Any Krex forces that attack innocent civilians anywhere in the galaxy will be hunted down and eliminated. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact. What are you?" Zakth whispered, his voice carrying the pheromones of absolute defeat. "We are humans. We are from Earth, and we have spent our entire history learning to fight things that were bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than we were." Admiral Chen's expression was implacable. "You made a mistake, Admiral. You threatened innocent people in front of a species that learned warfare from surviving everything the universe could throw at us." As the surviving Krex ships fled into hyperspace, Admiral Chen stood on her bridge and looked out at the planet below. Kethvar was scarred but alive. The Zalani were free, and humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy not as supplicants or conquerors, but as protectors. "Admiral, message from Earth," reported Commander Park. The Council is requesting a full report. Sarah smiled. Tell them the mission was successful. The Deathworlders have arrived in galactic civilization, and we brought everything we learned about survival. Around Kethvar, human ships began rescue operations, saving Krek survivors and providing medical aid even to their former enemies, because that too was something humanity had learned from their harsh world, that survival was better than revenge, and that protecting life was always worth the cost. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of conquest was ending and the age of protection had begun. The Deathworlders had come to stay,